Describe your involvement and your impressions about Medici II.
I am a fourth-year graduate student with Marty Seligman, and it was under those auspices that I was invited to participate in Medici II. I would have been here for 6 weeks anyway, toiling away more or less on my own, and then with Marty, of course. But the advent of the conference was an unexpected but wonderful turn of events for me as a doctoral student in psychology. I thought at the first week that this would be more or less an intrusion. I was signed up for what they call Project One, which was one of the study groups investigating productivity and health. And I was looking forward more with regret than with anticipation to the many meetings and the responsibilities that would be assigned to me at those meetings, wondering how I'd get done my research independently of that. But what happened was, as I guess often happens in life, what you don't necessarily expect or want to have happen ends up being a really good thing. So I quickly discovered that really what Medici was about was bringing together some of the most creative, thoughtful people in the world about some common problems, and that whether or not those topics directly interested me, I would grow a lot as a psychologist and a researcher just by being involved in those conversations. And it's hard to capture, but sitting around listening to George Vaillant think about poetry, socialism, human nature, wisdom, and spirituality all in the same breath. Learning from Ed Diener how to conceive of psychological traits and translate them into measures that people could understand and answer. These were the things that I didn't know would happen, but did happen. So while my formal role was being a working member of the Project One committee, really I think where the benefit was for me was in soaking up all of this expertise and wisdom from these eminent psychologists and economists and so forth. The surprising thing for me was that everyone was nice. I thought that intelligence and kindness were possibly inversely correlated, but if this sample says anything about that, then it's not true. So these very famous psychologists who know all of these things were consistently there to lend a helping hand to someone like me who is really a novice in the great scheme of things.
Describe how you think Medici II and follow-up seminars will affect positive psychology and the rest of your career.
The question crossed my mind of, how is this actually going to be effective, and if we really are empirical psychologists, we should walk the talk and wonder whether Medici is actually going to have a substantial measurable effect, or will it be 6 weeks of espresso and biscotti without anything to show for it. And during the first week, I think, it was Mike Csikszentmihalyi who came in to remind us of what Medici I was like, and to also describe what the outcomes of Medici I were, so as to provide some kind of historical benchmark, I guess, for Medici II. And it wasn't clear, actually. It was the sort of thing that, Medici I seems to have had a broad and substantive impact on what happened afterwards in terms of whether the various poets and artists, philosophers and the like who came to Medici I left with something that they didn't have before, that they wouldn't have gotten in any other way. And unfortunately in this case, I think hard outcomes in terms of, how many publications will emerge from this conference and how many studies were initiated, that's probably a very limited picture of what the benefit of the conference was, just as was the case with Medici I. So what I think will come out of this conference are friendships, relationships, collaborations that may or may not happen in the next year or two, ideas that probably will take some time to ferment. I can't believe that out of the rich soil that's been turned in the last 6 weeks, nothing will bear fruit. But I wonder whether that fruit will take some time to develop.
Discuss your area of interest within positive psychology.
I am a bit unusual. Relative to other graduate students, I think I'm about a decade older, at least than the peers in my class here at University of Pennsylvania. I came to Marty when I moved to Philadelphia after having had past careers, or at least glimpses of careers, in management consulting, public school teaching, nonprofit leadership, and so forth. So unlike the 23 and 24-year-olds who come to psychology graduate school wondering what it is that they will become interested in, I already knew. So at least in that decade, I had enough life experience to come to the questions that were, to me, the most compelling. I introduced myself to Marty and I said, hi, I know you study happiness. I think that's important. But what I'm interested in is achievement. In particular, my experience as a public school teacher in good and not so good public schools, working with kids who were above and quite below the mean in terms of achievement, I came to the following insight, which is that a lot of success in life doesn't have to do with native talent. The observation that was so striking to me was that millions of children are achieving far below their potential intellectually, and not for any learning disability problem, but more for issues that touch on motivation, perseverance, self-control, and other strengths that tend to be overlooked in psychology. Probably not so overlooked by parents and teachers who, can nod their head and say, well, of course these things matter. Did you need someone to tell you that? So when I came to Marty, I said I want to study achievement, particularly in kids, but also in adults, and I want to study the non-IQ factors that determine achievement. In the last 3 years, Marty and I have run several studies showing, for example, that a child's ability to choose $2 in a week versus $1 right away predicts their grade point average as well as their measured IQ. That to us is pretty remarkable, that such a gross measure of delayed gratification could be as important to the grades a child receives than their intelligence. We've extended that work looking at other measures of self-control and a construct we call grit. Grit we define as passionate purpose and high perseverance for a goal. And we feel that it is as important, if not more so, than talent in achieving long-term success.